Welcome to Satsang.
Hello, Vishrant. Can you please speak about today's topic? How should a seeker gauge their levels of consciousness?
It's a hard thing to gauge. So all I can talk about is how I watched my own mind and what I saw happening in it. As consciousness levels started to rise, I found I didn't get caught as much. Things that used to trip me up didn't trip me up any longer. I found more quietness in the mind. I found more silence. I also found more clarity. And so it is hard to measure because it's usually a slow process raising consciousness levels. But when you look at your mind and you see that it's not reacting like it used to react, something's changed. What's changed? Some kind of belief system's been removed that has an expectation on it. When not met, a contraction occurs, is no longer there. And so life becomes easier. Suffering becomes less because you're not getting caught in victim-orientated thinking. Though there are different stages of raising consciousness levels. And there is a stage that you go through where you have to feel or experience a lot of pain body, and that can be unpleasant. But that also happens as a result of raising consciousness levels because you become willing to heal the wounds of your heart. You become willing to stop running away from what's inside of you and facing it and allowing it to be there in acceptance. Life becomes easier basically because you are practicing acceptance. People who practice resistance, which is most of the world's adult population, suffer incredibly at their own hand because resistance equals suffering. When we practice acceptance and raise our consciousness levels, we suffer a great deal less. And so people who have higher consciousness levels don't tend to suffer anywhere near as much as people who have lower consciousness because they're not caught in the dream so much anymore. It's been seen through. It's being witnessed and not engaged in, rather than being lost in. The ability to see the big picture of everything that's happening around you also occurs as consciousness levels rise because you're not caught in small story. You're not caught in the dramas of life. You're a little bit detached. You're a little bit further back. And so you see more clearly the consequences of actions, the consequences of words. Higher consciousness is brilliant. Lower consciousness is not brilliant, it's awful. Because in lower consciousness, you're just reacting. In higher consciousness, you start responding, which is different. My interest in higher consciousness began when I was a young teenager. I could see there was a huge advantage in being able to see how the mind worked because it allows you to also see how everyone else is operating, because we all operate pretty much the same. Ignorance of how your mind is operating is lower consciousness. Not a good idea. Every endeavor should be to raise consciousness levels to enlightenment for freedom. On the way through, there's a beautiful way to live, and that's the way of the heart. And that requires openness. Openness also is a pathway to higher consciousness. If you practice openness, you remove all the obstacles that are in the way, because if they're in the way, you don't get to perceive love. And so you remove them. So openness in itself is a wonderful tool to enlightenment and a wonderful tool to perceiving love. It's up to you, though. Only you can do this. You can't get any of this by reading a book or by listening to a guru. You get this by practicing. You practice openness. You practice being present to reality. You practice self-inquiry. You practice. And whatever you practice, you'll become good at. If part of your practice is removing limiting belief systems, that'll start to set you free from the mind, because we've all been programmed quite badly. Once you examine how you've been programmed, you'll see. Anything that creates contraction and resistance in you will create suffering in you. All those belief systems need to be challenged, have doubt put in them and removed, because they're in the way, they're obstacles. It's up to you. Only you can do this. Nobody can do it for you. Someone can point the way and maybe get you enthusiastic, but that's the maximum they can really do. You're the one who has to do the practice. It's up to you. Are there any questions? Any statements? Any challenges to these teachings today?
The first question is, what level of consciousness is high enough for awakening to occur?
For Satori, consciousness levels don't have to be high at all, because Satori is just a glimpse. Awareness flicks onto itself for a little while, and the mind recognizes that there's something greater than itself. For someone to stay awake, consciousness levels have to be very high. There is just no doubt about that. Lower consciousness does not support enlightenment. Only higher consciousness does. Higher consciousness is the step before enlightenment. If you like, the waiting ground for enlightenment.
Is it important to know how advanced or how lost I am?
It's important to know how to get to higher consciousness. It's important to have a goal of higher consciousness and a methodology of getting there. And it's important to practice that methodology. How lost you are or how advanced you are, in a lot of ways, irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Have the goal of higher consciousness and have a plan on how to get there, and then execute the plan. That's what works.
The next question has been written by Peter. Hi Vishrant. As allowing increases and beliefs fall away, does the ease that you speak come from a natural alignment with what is?
Sorry, I missed a word there. Did you say ease?
Yes. In other words, does what life presents to me seem to become closer to what I want?
What you want, my gosh. What you want is always in the way. There's only one desire worth having, and that's the desire to be free. And that's the only desire that I'll support in a human being, really. Because all other desires, well, including that one, are suffering because they're a form of resistance. But the desire to be free, the thirst for truth, is what brings people home. Without that thirst, without that desire, there is no coming home. There is no knowing yourself as truth, because the mind has to be ready to support beingness if it's found. And unless the thirst is there, the mind will not surrender unconditionally. And that is a requirement for enlightenment. Unconditional surrender.
The next question has been written by a viewer. Hi, Vishrant. To achieve higher consciousness, this journey, why does it sometimes feel good, sometimes feel slowed down, or nothing happening?
Well, as your mind becomes quieter, there is nothing happening. People live in their heads, so they think there's something happening all the time. But most of the time, there's nothing happening. Most of the time, it's just quiet. Most of the time, it's quite peaceful. It becomes unpeaceful when you start living in your head and you start procrastinating and worrying, projecting. As you proceed in consciousness levels, your life becomes quieter. Becomes quieter inside. And so it might seem like nothing's happening, but really you're just getting closer to reality. There's not much happening. It's all pretty quiet.
The next question has been written by Natalia. I'm confused when being open. Like now, I'm sick physically and not allowed to do many things I like and want. How can I accept this situation if in reality I'm not able to do anything? How can I open myself to a situation that itself in reality is limited for me?
The whole problem isn't reality, isn't your reality. The problem is your non-acceptance of how it is. If you were in acceptance of how it is, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Life gives you what it gives you. You can not accept it and suffer, or you can accept it and end suffering. Your choice. Everybody's imprisoned in a body. Everybody's handicapped in some way. It's only when we don't accept our situations that we create suffering for ourselves. In full acceptance, we are free. You say there's nothing you can do. I disagree. You can accept life as it is, or you can resist life as it is. But just remember one thing. If you're suffering, you're responsible for it because you're the one offering the resistance.
Next, we have a question from Jur.
Hello.
Namaskaram, Vishrant. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Cool. I have a question about self-inquiry, the Advaita Vedanta way, where there's no, well, you know, which way is that? I decided that instead of thinking unnecessary thoughts, I would self-inquire throughout the day. But then I often find myself just repeating the words with no real weight or intent behind them, like a parrot would. or asking the question rapidly without much pause between the askings. So what I want to know is there a proper way to ask this question? Who am I?
What's your motivation for self-inquiring?
Well, I've been thinking about this logically. What would be the thing in life to try to go for? And even logically, it seems that knowing who I am deep down inside or cosmically would be the most important thing. So
how strong is that desire?
It's pretty strong. I mean, it's still, if you feeling good would be the bigger desire. So I see self-inquiry as a way to get there, to just feeling good all the time.
Yeah, your motivation's wrong. Because you're wanting to feel good, in a way you're using self-inquiry as an avoidance mechanism to take you away from not feeling so good. The person who succeeds at self-inquiry has a thirst for truth, like a man being held under water, starving for air. Just trying to get away from something or getting into it because of curiosity is not enough to keep the self-inquiry going. That's why you lose it when you're doing it. The motivation is not strong enough to want to know who you are.
Okay. So if I want to feel just good all the time, what would be the thing to do? Because in the world, I tried, smoking marijuana and, going out with friends and, the usual things, and nothing is doing it, so to speak.
Yeah. So I recognize that a selfish life is a life that's never going to really be that happy. And so I decided to serve hard because for a long time I'd given up on enlightenment because my teacher died. And I decided to move into serving hard, which meant for me serving other human beings as a psychotherapist, naturopath, father, friend, neighbor. And in the service, I found love, and that made me happy. And I called that manageable happiness. Self-inquiry isn't designed to make you happy. It's designed to set you free. The one that wants to be happy doesn't make it to that party. The I never wakes up. That's not a possibility. Awareness becomes aware of itself, and the I, the one that wants it, actually drops. But on the way to that, the path, the way of the heart, is a beautiful way to live because it brings you a lot of happiness, what I call manageable happiness. Enlightenment offers a different sort of happiness. It's profound contentment for no reason, but there's no one there who cares anymore because the I has dropped.
So if I'm understanding correctly, instead of thinking of myself, that would be the best thing to do, just start thinking about others and not being so selfish in a way.
Yeah, well, selfishness brings its own misery. That's the problem, and we're all got selfishness in us and self-obsession. But when we start putting ourselves aside and serving others, there's a certain beauty in that for us as well. And that beauty could be called happiness. There's no real beauty in being selfish or self-obsessed. As a matter of fact, there's usually suffering. And so you've got to step back and look at your life. How are you actually living your life? Are you actually doing things that are making you happy? Collecting things doesn't make people happy. It makes them happy for a few seconds and they want something else. What actually brings happiness in this world is when we find love. And we find love in the service of plants, the animals, the other people. We find love in service, in giving rather than taking. And so this is a beautiful way for a spiritual person to live while self-inquiring.
Okay. I've got a lot to think about. Thank you for the
One of
answer.
the go on for one of the problems with a lot of the Advaita Vedanta teachers, like Ramana Maharshi, they were hermits. They weren't in the marketplace. They didn't have a job. They didn't have a family, so they didn't have to do. They could just self-inquire all day long. But in the marketplace, we've got to have another way of living as well. We can self-inquire, that'll work. But the other way has to be the way of the heart. You have to have the bhakti path and the jnana path, the discipline path and the path of devotion. And that way we can fly in the marketplace. Otherwise, it's too difficult. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I found that combining being in the marketplace and just doing spirituality all day long or just going for it is very hard to combine together.
Yeah. So I combined the two. The bhakti path, which is the way of the heart, and the jnana path, the path of discipline, the path of self-inquiry, the path of being present to reality. I combined both of them. I didn't just sit with one because I wasn't prepared to be a hermit because I had a family and I had a job.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. A lot of these older teachers are teaching jnanis. They're not teaching lay people. They're teaching people who are willing to live in monasteries and ashrams and caves. And it's just not suitable for people who are in the marketplace.
Okay, so for us, the bhakti path would be better, or the combination of the two.
Yeah, the combination of the two works quite sweetly. The path, the bhakti path demands openness. And what openness does is if we practice it, which supports heart, we get to remove all the obstacles that are in the way of enlightenment, because they're also the same obstacles that are in the way of the heart.
So as you said, it's a beautiful way to live and to get to the goal.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Nice
thank
talking
you.
to you.
Yeah, same here.
Next, Susha has a question.
Hi, Bhagwan.
Hello, Susha.
Bhagwan, when I find more silence, just your voice takes me there. I also find more tears. I also find uncontrollable shaking. Is this on the way?
Heck yeah. Yeah, you're releasing a lifetime of repressed emotionality, possibly lifetimes of repressed emotionality. This is good news, not bad news. It's an emptying out process, a purging process. It's brilliant. Let it happen.
Does this have to complete fully before superconsciousness can stay?
You can't be interested in completion because you have no idea how much is there.
That's right.
It's an unknown quantity. So the correct attitude that'll bring you to a relaxed space with it is this forever. Because when we're waiting for something, there's a sense of tension in us. But if we make it okay forever, that tension drops.
Yes. Yeah, I have tears flowing right now, so thank you.
It's an old friend leaving. Let
I
it
have
go.
nothing happening. There is no story. It's just happening.
Energy is an old friend. It's an old energy friend leaving. Let it go. Be okay with it. Be warmly okay with it. This is the way.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question is from Peter.
Hello, Peter.
Hello, Vishrant. I tried to write that question and it didn't come out well. I really have been taking to heart what you said last time, and life has taken me, like I'm on a job in New York now, and I'm really just letting go as much as I can, and I'm realizing that what I want and the things I want are less important than what life is giving me, and the process of myself letting go and what life brings me are getting closer and closer together as you know as I listen to what you say and surrender more. Is there a way of when life gives you something, you want that as well, even if it's a good thing or a bad thing in the old way of thinking or whatever? It's just you taking what is as it comes
Well,
without.
that is where it comes to. It's like, is it okay whether you get it or you don't get it? Is it okay? Are you okay with success and failure? Are you okay? Or are you addictively demanding somewhere? Because that's when we hurt ourselves.
Right. So that's where the old patterns fall away, and the old conditioning falls away, and then what life presents is what you allow, and then the old programming just falls away.
It's even the idea of allowing is too much.
Right.
Because it indicates some form of doing. It's just being okay with everything as it appears. It's a relaxed mind.
Because it's wonderful. The way the shoot is unfolding is almost magical, and I'm almost not wanting to disturb it at all, because everything's just working, and I'm not working in the way that I used to want it to work, but just the way that it is.
Yeah. Don't ever get caught in result. Be okay with whatever appears. See, I see life as perfect. Whatever happens is meant to be happening, otherwise it would not be happening.
Yes.
And I'm not going to fight that. It's okay as it is. And because of that, there's profound peace. The moment we resist what is, we take ourselves away from peace and into turmoil.
Right. Thank you so much. I really feel your energy around me, and I just thank you so much for who you are and what you do, Vishrant. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's always lovely to talk to you, Peter.
Thank you, Vishrant.
Next, there is a question from Madura.
Hi, Vishrant.
Hello, Madura.
Hello. So my work and my school, my work or studying in general has made me anxious from an early age. I have changed my careers and following the path of the heart. And like you said, the combination of self-inquiry and serving the heart has been working beautifully, but I keep doubting myself along the way. I recently got an opportunity to do it more formally, like as a job. But I feel anxious, and it lowers, and hearing you, I feel like it has been lowering my consciousness.
Yeah, fear takes you into lower consciousness. And it will always take you there. What's the bet that you're not okay with failure?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
What is the bet that you're not okay with failure?
Yes.
You see, if you were okay with failure, there wouldn't be so much to be anxious about. The anxiety is a resistance against failure or loss. If you're okay with failure, that will quieten down quite a bit. There's nothing wrong with doing your best to succeed, but can you be okay with failure at the same time? Because if you can't, you're going to hold yourself in a state of tension.
Yes.
And so we're talking really attitude. We've been programmed at school and university or wherever else to go for success no matter what, to win.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is it keeps us in a state of tension. Can we do our best and still be okay with failure? Because if we can, the mind can stay relaxed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I just have this habit to be in tension when it comes to work, when it comes to school. The fear of failure is just so ingrained, and I just feel it in my body. Or when you say it, I'm like, how to be okay with it? Like what? Like how can I accept it? Like I understand it intellectually, and I've failed. Like I've failed a lot of times, and I get it, but I don't think I accept it or I understand it.
It's not that you don't accept it, it's that you don't practice it enough. You see, what you practice is being anxious about things, and that's what you're good at. That's your default pattern. To change that default pattern, you have to bring another pattern in, and the pattern I'm talking about is acceptance of failure. That can only occur and change things, not through intellectual understanding, but through practice.
Ah, okay.
We don't change default patterns by insight. We change them by practicing something different to what we've done before.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah.
It actually is great. It's that, but unfortunately, we've all been programmed that insight is the answer. Insight in changing default patterns is an invitation to do the work, to do the practice.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
So my practice is to notice the pattern when it comes and find a way to replace it within.
Find a way to be okay with not succeeding. Find a way to be okay with failure.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. I've never looked at it that way. Okay.
Okay. I wish you the best, but I do know that if you practice something long enough, you will get good at it.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Sounds great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
The next question has been written by Brian. When self-inquiring, should we always start from acceptance? I ask this because I noticed when there's too much resistance, my mind is so restless and it becomes hard to be present enough to self-inquire.
Okay. You can start self-inquiring at any stage, but you're not going to get results until the mind's relaxed. So I used to self-inquire for hours and hours on end, and my mind would get slower and slower and more relaxed. And then the results would start coming in. A tense mind, an upset mind, isn't going to actually support what's being found, and it's highly unlikely awareness will turn on itself anyway. It's only in relaxation that self-inquiry works well. And usually that's because you've been self-inquiring for a long time. It's up to you. It sounds like you might be using self-inquiry to get away from something. Maybe the tension, maybe the roughness of life. It doesn't really matter. But self-inquiry works because you self-inquire for long periods of time, asking what's aware. A thought arises, you ask what's aware. It is always best to have a mind that is quiet. So acceptance definitely quietens the mind. Not a bad practice to have. Accept life as it is rather than resisting it. And self-inquire.
The next question has been written by Mario. Dear Vishrant, thank you again. The older I get, the more I cherish silence. Do you find this also?
Mario, I am silence. From the perspective of the mind rests in silence and stillness. It doesn't talk to itself anymore. Beingness, that I am, does not move and is absolutely silent. And it is everything. and it is always here.
The next,
I don't think this has anything to do with age. This has everything to do with enlightenment. Okay.
the next question has been written by a viewer. If there's no internal dialogue, am I necessarily in no mind?
Could be. If the mind's silent, you're in no mind. If it's talking to itself, you're not in no mind. And so my mind is silent, then talking begins, and then silent again.
The next question is from a viewer. How do I measure how deeply I can witness my mind?
Why would you want to measure it? Just witness the mind. Just watch what it's doing. Like you're watching somebody else do something. Just watch without judgment. I don't understand this needing to know depth. You just witness the mind. You just watch what it's doing all the time. You develop the silent witness, and then the mind shows itself to you. Then your consciousness levels start rising. Okay?
The next question has been written by Tharanga. You talk about opening different chakra centers, the crown, the third eye, etc. What does this have to do with higher consciousness? Does more open chakras mean higher consciousness levels?
I would say that's true. Most people don't have their crown open, and most people don't have their third eye open. And a lot of people don't have their heart chakra open either because they're too closed, they're too defended. Someone who has higher consciousness has removed all defenses. They walk through the world vulnerable. And so in lower consciousness, those chakras don't tend to be open because people are too closed. As your consciousness levels rise, particularly if you hang out with people who are awake, your crown opens, your third eye opens, your heart opens, the chakras. So it's good to hang out with people who are further ahead than you. They'll help you become further ahead. The crowd that we hang out with is important. It's important to be with people going in the same direction.
The next question has been written by Brian. My motivation for self-inquiry is to realize my Buddha nature or to find the self. Is this sufficient motivation?
Yes, it is. That's the correct motivation. Not trying to get away from something, just trying to discover true nature. And as you start to find it, as you start to find the emptiness, the vastness, the nothingness, the silence, the stillness, your mind will fall in love with it. And when it falls in love with that, it will do whatever it takes to facilitate that.
The next question has been written by a viewer. Hello, Vishrant. Are chakras felt as if they were inside the physical body, or how does one perceive them? Thank you.
So the lowest chakra is felt more internally. The sexual chakra is felt more internally. The power chakra is felt more internally. The heart chakra can be felt internally, but it can also be felt quite externally, coming out. The throat chakra can be felt internally and externally. The third eye, as it's developing, as it's opening, can feel like a torpedo coming out of the forehead here. The crown chakra can feel like a plate opening up like this. But when the crown is fully open, you don't feel it anymore. When the third eye is fully open, you don't feel it anymore. When the heart is fully open, you don't feel it anymore either. But they can be felt externally, like pressure. When I first came in contact with my awake teachers, I started feeling pressure in my third eye and around my crown and in my heart because they were being opened in the presence, in the Buddha field of my teachers.
The next question has been written by Neil. I try pursuing the bhakti path, but sometimes I experience an inner resistance when it comes to giving and sharing. How to deal with this resistance?
So the bhakti path, it can simply mean smiling at someone and saying hello. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to give everything away. You can, there's not a problem with that. But the bhakti path is the way of the heart. How can you lift those around you? You don't necessarily have to give them anything physically. How can you lift them? How about a nice hello or a smile? How are you today? The bhakti path, the way of the heart, makes you feel like you just want to take care of everybody. That doesn't necessarily mean you want to give everything to everybody, though you can do that if you want to. Don't give yourself a hard time because you find there's things you want to hang on to. It's okay. Be okay with you. Be okay with you, but be generous of spirit.
The next question has been written by Baram. Hi Vishrant. I feel very disconnected to people around me after my eyes are opened spiritually with the help of Osho's discourses. Is this normal and how can I overcome this feeling?
Yeah, you feel detached. I understand. I used to feel that also. I think it's probably best if you talk to me rather than text me. It's too hard to answer a text message like that without asking you a few more things. If you get an opportunity, see if you can talk to me.
The next question has been written by a viewer. If there's no internal talking, but there's feelings and sensations, is that no mind?
No, that's still mind because the feelings and the sensations come from the mind. No mind is blank.
The next question has been written by Brian. What are the best ways to dissolve the ego?
Ultimately, the best way to dissolve the ego is to give your life to truth. But that's a death. That's unconditional surrender. And then it's over. The ego just drops because awareness is aware of itself. Who you truly are is aware of itself now. And the false one just drops. All other methodologies will never diminish it that much. But the less story you have about yourself, the less I there is. And so in not entertaining the story of you, the I diminishes. Putting yourself aside for the benefit of the planet, the benefit of animals, the benefit of the other human beings. This works. It diminishes you as an I. If you get rid of the story of you, there's not going to be much you there. You've got to look at the opposite of that. People who set themselves up as drama queens, always being the center of attention. There's too much of them in the picture, and as a result, there's a lot of suffering. The less I, the less suffering. No I, no problem. But no I, no problem is enlightenment, really. The I's not there all the time, but for ego-based people, it comes and goes. For awake people, it's gone. It dropped. There's just a sense of nobody here.
The next question has been written by Baram. I witness that everybody is looking for mundane things and talk absurdly. It makes me a bit depressed. Through each day, I see all things happening in slow motion around me. Each morning I wake up, it is like my body is on small doses of LCD, probably LSD. Why did I start feeling so? Love from Canada.
Yeah, and I wake up in the morning and there's no one here. It's been a long time now. And half the time I feel off my face. Blissed out to the max. Keep letting go. Keep surrendering. If you can turn awareness onto itself with self-inquiry, do that. Don't stop. In the 80s, I tried LSD. And right now, it's like I'm on a massive dose of it, but I'm not. My mind is just fully blown. I'm as high as a kite. I'm blissed out to the max. It's taken a long time to be able to talk and stay blissed out. You should try enlightenment.
The next question is from Pooja.
Hi, Vishrant.
Hello.
So, there have been certain memories of early childhood which have been recently surfacing, which I might call it as maybe a small Satori or something. Just wanted to know, does it hold any value now
No,
today
what
for me
holds
to
value
remember?
now? Is only now. What's real now? What's here now? This is real. Nothing else is real. The past is not real. The future is not real. Only now is real. And so what's here now? That's valuable. What's gone is gone. What's yet to come is yet to come. What's here now is real. That's it.
Yeah.
People live in these projections thinking that somehow the past is important and the future is important. No, it's dead. It's not real. Now it's real.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You never want to past experiences of spirituality. Sometimes they're referred to as the Buddha on the path. And the old statement is, if you meet the Buddha on the path, you kill the Buddha. Because if you carry it in memory, you're lost in the past. You're lost in dream. Let it go. Be here now.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Vishrant.
The next question has been written by a viewer. Is there a relationship between diet and enlightenment?
I believe so. Because it's all about energy in so many ways. If the body and the mind are disturbed by what you're eating, in that something's too hot or something makes you sleepy, well, it's in the way. A sattvic diet is best. That's a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet. I started recognizing that certain foods affected my clarity. And so I started avoiding those foods because I love clarity. And I loved being able to see clearly what was happening around me, the consequences of everything that was going on. And what you eat can affect your clarity. Some food can make you feel really tired and lethargic. Other food can hype up. Best is foods that don't do that. But that's up to you. I'm not going to tell anyone what they can and can't eat. I just followed my own intuition with what gave me clarity. The decision to be a vegetarian came as a result of being a hunter. I actually raised my consciousness levels enough to open my heart and realize that I didn't have the right to take animals' lives. And so I stopped because it's their most valuable possession. And as a result of stopping, I also stopped eating meat and fish because they had to die for me to eat, and I wasn't willing to be involved in that anymore. But that was a personal decision. Everyone's entitled to whatever they do. I don't have a problem with that. But for myself, I love the clarity of the type of food that I eat. It gives me good clarity. I don't eat food that makes me feel lethargic or tired, and I don't eat food that disturbs my mind. Can't be bothered. It's up to you, though. You try and see what you like. It's up to you.
The next question has been written by Demetrius. Does boredom have any significance? I feel bored a lot in the present moment. Is this purging?
Yeah, get used to it. Because as your mind, we're all experience junkies, entertainment junkies. We're all addicted to entertainment, and as your mind becomes quieter, it's going to get bored. Be okay with boredom forever. Surrender yourself to boredom forever, because as the mind goes through getting rid of the addiction, it's going to feel bored because it's going to want to be entertained. It's because it's addicted to being entertained. And a silent mind is not being entertained by anything. It's just silent. And so in the pathway to higher consciousness, the mind can start getting bored because it's starting to meet a lot of silence. And it's so used to being entertained. And the entertainment's not there anymore. So be absolutely 100% okay with boredom forever.
The next question is from Abhay.
Hi, Bhagwan.
Hello, Bay.
Bhagwan, I had a desire to meet a master and be with him, and that has come true. Now I am with you. Now I have a desire to come and be close to you. So is it worth having this desire?
Look, I had a curiosity about my master, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. I was listening to his tapes and watching his videos and playing with his sannyasins and having a great time in Fremantle. And then I fell in love with him. and I wanted to be closer to him. So I went to America and lived in America with him in 1984. And then I went back in 1985 and lived with him again. And then I missed him for a while he was traveling around. And I went back to India and lived with him in Pune because I loved him and I wanted to be close to him. So you're talking to someone who understands. I understand the love affair. I understand the attraction to the master.
Yes, this daily talking and attending satsangs, now it's like, I want more, I want more. So I was just wondering if it is just a cycle of wanting more and more, or it is a good desire to have.
It is the desire that brought me home. The desire to be close to truth, because my teachers represented truth to me because they carried a Buddha field. And in that Buddha field, I could dissolve and find myself as truth. I don't think there's any better or faster way to enlightenment than to be with someone who is enlightened, because their Buddha field supports you in finding yourself as truth. And so when I was a seeker, I was very attracted to spending time with my teachers. In the 70s and 80s, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. In the 90s, the Advaita Vedanta teachers. I would spend as much time as I possibly could, as close as I possibly could in their presence, because I could feel it undoing me, and I started to find myself as truth in their presence. And so I can't recommend that highly enough.
Wow.
Okay, Abai?
Yes, Bhagwan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Satsang. Good to see you brave hearts here today.